And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Gary Cocciolillo, paranormal investigator and remote viewer who has also had a near-death experience where he went to the cosmic eye of the universe. Gary, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Well, Gary, let's start on the day that you died and go from there.
All right. So it wasn't like a real big deal, actually, the near-death experience. I think most people, first of all, would think like, oh, wow, it's a big deal. But it is and it isn't in a weird way. Like for me, like my day was ordinary and I didn't feel good at work. I had like a really, really bad epileptic type of seizure. And during that seizure, I was, like I described, like the cosmic eye of the universe. I was like in this black hole. I felt 100 complete peace and calmness. It wasn't like a blissful experience, but it was a very safe, warm, nice experience. And then moving around me were like these different colors or sounds. It was like there's really like no difference between color and sound. And like that was like the visual part of it. But I don't even think like that visual aspect though was my brain. I still think there might have been some brain activity in there. But that peace, that calmness, and that awareness that was so incredible. And then, I woke up in in the ambulance, and I was a little bit mad. I was like, "Shit, I'm back here again! Like, what the hell is this shit?" And and it made me curious, because I had been into the occult and paranormal and a lot of these type of topics prior to having this experience. And I had this experience and it really jarred me a little bit. And another weird aspect of it is, I would say about a week later, I got a book in the mail on time paradoxes. And the receipt was dated 6 months into the future. And in my mind, for some reason, I connected the two. For some reason, I thought like, wow, maybe I connected with a future self and somehow found a way to send myself a book from the future. I know that weird idea that there's these parallel dimensions and parallel versions of me, and maybe somehow I get connected with that while I was not present in this current dimension. And then during this time too, COVID hit. During COVID, I didn't have anything to do, and at least as far as a creative outlet, and that's how I started the podcast. And and ever since then, this has just been this evolving. I don't know if obsession is the word, but definitely a very, very deep curiosity that has led me to some really strange and interesting places.
Well, that's amazing that you got a book from the future. I mean,
Isn't it weird?
That is crazy.
It is weird. And I took a picture of it. There's a picture of it on my Facebook page. I took a picture of the book and the receipt and put it on Facebook, the date that I received it, just so I would have proof.
Wow.
So you can go on my Facebook page. You just go back far enough, you'll find that picture.
After your NDE, did you notice you had any gifts or psychic abilities that you didn't have prior?
No, not at all. Nothing like that. In fact, if anything, I was just cranky. I really was just mad. I was just mad, like, holy shit, like that place was really, really nice. Now I'm back here in this world of duality. What the hell?
So you had your seizure. You just went from going unconscious instantly to the black hole, or did you pop out of your body and make a journey there?
There was no journey. I was just there.
Mm.
That's where my awareness disappeared here and appeared there. Which makes sense in a way because of quantum entanglement theories, where consciousness is active in other dimensions all at the same time.
Well, we're non-local and we're not really tied to this body. We may just blink out and then wake back up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone hit the power button and kind of turned it on and off. And there you are. Did you have a history of epilepsy?
I would say I kind of was one of those things. Like I knew I had something, but I never really acted on it. Like I knew I'd kind of like pass out every once in a while. I was a little suspicious of like what it was,
And then
but
you just had like a big
yeah,
blowout.
epilepsy has bad social consequences too.
Yeah.
The world really frowns upon the epileptic.
Yeah, I could see that. I love how you said that there is no difference between color and sound. Can
Mhm.
you expand on that?
Yeah, what's it called? Synesthesia, I think. Where some people interpret colors as sounds and
Hmm.
sounds as colors. It's probably because it's all the same shit. But that's not so much. Like I say, like when I do interviews for my podcast, when I first started doing them, I didn't know what I was doing, and I would focus on those visuals and the actual messages that these people were receiving and things like that. But what I think is I think everybody's going to perceive what their mind is able to perceive during these traumatic moments. The mind's just going to go for whatever's going to make the individual feel as comfortable and as peaceful as possible. And that's what those sounds and images are. I think there's something when you're in that state, though, there's something deeper and you can feel it. You can feel it pulling you. And I think like that is the real presence.
Do you think that that place could have been a starting place where you were, that you can go from there anywhere,
Yeah,
like a home
yeah.
base or something?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, I think that was just the surface of it.
Did it change your life in any way afterwards?
Not really, no, just other than starting the podcast. I think the podcast may have been from some internal voice from within, maybe as a result of that event.
Hmm. And I want to let everybody know that Gary's podcast is called Everything Imaginable. And it's on YouTube and it's also on an audio podcast, right?
Yeah, you can find it on Spotify, Amazon, anywhere, Apple,
Hmm.
anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you'll find me.
So it's
I
great to
have
have,
about 560 episodes.
and it's awesome to have like a colleague here together, We can talk shop a little bit. I introduced you as a remote viewer. How did you get into that?
Remote viewing story. It's a good one. I had a guest on, um, and he has told me he was a part of the remote viewing program, and he had these tapes made by Bob Monroe, and um, and these and he had these tapes, and he wanted something to do with them, and I said okay, and I had him send me these tapes. Well, he didn't send them to me, but he sent them to my one of my other guests, Damien, who knows how to do all this audio stuff. We got the cassettes, we made copies of them, we digitized them. I had them, but I didn't know what to do with them. And then I was reaching out back to this guest, and he stopped responding to me. So that really made me even more worried about ever releasing these tapes to the public. So I was going through looking for other guests that actually no, I was doing like I'd go through on Amazon, look for people that have interesting books, and so anyway, I found this guy Dave Morehouse, and Dave. I told Dave, I asked sent him an invite to be in my podcast. He wasn't really interested in it. He's like, nah, I don't really think so. You're like a little bit out there, whatever. And I was like, and he's like, why do you want me? And I told him the story about this guy giving me the tapes. 2 days later, he was on my podcast and telling me all about some of the confusion between Project Stargate and MK Ultra and a remote viewing and all these different things. And at that time, he was also giving a course, a video course on remote viewing. And he asked me if I would be interested in taking it, and I took it. And that's how all that came about. It's kind of a long story.
Hmm. That's all right.
But in his world of podcasting, like you do like find these really interesting, weird connections.
So are you successful at it?
I haven't really done a whole lot after the course on my own, but during the course, it was mind blowing how it works. It
Mm.
is definitely 100% legit. obviously our government knows that we can use our consciousness in this way. So what else do they know?
And what did you see?
Well, you're giving like an 8-digit number. That's all you're given. And then you go through this different process of writing down information. There's sort of these different columns of different types of information that you fill out after you listen to this binaural beat and get your brain into an alpha state. So you don't necessarily see, you see bits and pieces of things and you start writing them down. And then at the end, you just try to put it all together into something coherent. That's how he taught us to do it. And like, for example, like one of the targets was a weird whirlpool accident where they were drilling for a oil rig and it punched a hole into a cave and created this big whirlpool and sucked the town down. My drawing that I drew was literally of a spiral with a big triangle in the middle
Wow.
of it. Like, and that was like my first experience with it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, holy shit, this shit is real.
That's amazing. If we get back to your NDE, has the memories of that faded over time?
No. No, because it was like the memory itself was very simple. Blackness, complete peace and calmness, and that weird visual audio experience that was going on around me. And that was it.
A lot of my guests will say that they go to a place that's completely black without the spiral clouds like a black hole. We call it the black void. Do you think you were there? And if not, have you talked to any guests about that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I know about like the different types of NDE experiences, like the white light experience, the black light experience, and then there's like the clear experience. Like that weird that category of them because I've done, So no, I think there's a just good like labeling those experiences and stuff like that is fine to help people put them in different categories and stuff like that. But for me, like what's really at the heart of it was something that like I can't describe in a visual. I can't describe it in a sound. I can't even describe it as an emotion.
What if you compare the reality of us here versus the reality on the other side?
On the other side is just peace, man. It's pure consciousness.
Well, some of my guests will comment that the other side is real and here is the dream.
Well, I do think this life does have a dream aspect to it. I mean, I am a believer that reality is not real in a sense, just because of quantum physics and the observer effect.
During any of your podcasts, do you talk about where we live here is a simulation?
Yes, I have covered the simulation theory quite a bit. And I do kind of feel like, yes, I don't necessarily really think it's a simulation, but what I do think it is some kind of organic. I look at it as more of some kind of consciousness as some kind of universal organism. It's organic. It's not a computer. It's not ones and zeros. I think it's something different than that. But it's definitely creating out of its own consciousness. Like that, it's becoming cliche now that people say, well, we're the universe experiencing itself. Like that does seem to be the truth.
I like that. I don't know if I've heard that. And you said it's a cliche, but it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it's been around for forever. Like if you go through all the ancient mystery schools, all the way up into now what we're learning in quantum physics, that seems to be the case.
You mentioned the clear experience of an NDE, and I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I don't remember what it is. I just remember, I forget who it was. One of my guests had explained them to me. I don't know if it was PMH or Evan Alexander. It was one of my NDE guests that had told me about it. I can't remember everything that I've been told in my podcast. I don't know. Can you?
No, I can't either.
I can barely quote guests.
People will ask me, are you going to write a book? And I say, I don't know, maybe after 1,000 NDEs. But I still get guests with new information coming. So I just don't feel like I have it all mapped out yet, or at least not enough to to make it worthy of writing into a book? Where are you on something like that?
I do have a book out.
Oh, wow. What is it?
Yeah. It's called Enlightenment Guaranteed, the only book on Zen you'll ever need.
What's it about?
Meditation.
Just meditation?
Yeah,
Cool. Awesome. Can you find that on Amazon?
absolutely.
All right.
I don't recommend it, actually. Truthfully, I do not like my own book anymore.
Why?
I'll be honest, I don't like it. Because I think I oversimplified a much more complex topic. And I think I made it superficial.
What do you
But
mean by that?
I wrote this book way before the podcast. I
But
wrote it just from a perspective of Buddhist meditation.
was it after your NDE?
You know, it was before,
Oh,
way
okay.
before, like 10 years before.
So I could see now you have a whole new perspective.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, if you're buying a book, take it for what it is. Nah, I don't really dig it anymore myself.
Well, I guess you could always revise it.
I could, but I don't know. Right? I will write a sequel. Eventually, it's going to be called Bewilderment Guaranteed, the only book on perplexity you'll ever need.
There you go.
After podcast book.
So you were angry that when you first got back, right?
Yeah, it's a bummer coming back to duality, man.
Do you feel like you're still processing the NDE?
I guess you have to define what is processing.
Still reflecting on it and making judgments or making conclusions about it, changing your mind on what really happened and where you are in
but
your life?
I never really went through a processing period with it. You know, they're really, I mean, it was just that adjustment of being pissed off.
Yeah. That's common though. A lot of people are angry that they're back.
But that was about it. Like I guess maybe because I had already have background in all this stuff, I kind of recognize it for what it was.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you had a background in the paranormal, do you think that affected your experience on the other side?
Sure, yeah. Like I believe if I was a Christian, I probably would have saw Jesus. I believe if I was a Muslim, I would have saw, the Muslim guy. If I was still really heavy in Buddhism, maybe I would have saw a Buddha or Amitabha or something like that. I believe the experience adjusts itself to make the transition into the next dimension or whatever you want to call it comfortable.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on reincarnation? And if you believe in it, do you think there's an end point to it?
So I do believe that reincarnation happens, but then and that's like a topic too, because one of the things I want to say is like doing this podcast, sometimes my opinion changes over time. So if I give my opinion now, it could change later on with new information.
Well, that's reasonable.
And I think that an important thing to always focus on is to be malleable and stuff, especially in these type of gray area topics. Where there's evidence, but it's still not physical evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So in reincarnation, like first I was fascinated by it and thought about doing past life regressions and all that stuff, and found it really interesting. And then I started looking at things from the perspective, especially after the remote feeling experience, because one of the big topics during that class was things being beyond space and time. Okay, so time is not real, space is not real. So if time is not real and space is not real, then how do you come up with a linear way to explain reincarnation? It becomes a problem, like logically for me.
Well, people
So
do
everything's happening at one time, and everything is just information. You're not really looking at past life. What you're looking at is information from a different story that you're taking part in.
What makes it even more of a puzzle is being here. People talk about you need to be in the present, but all around you in the physical environment are things that were created in the past.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There really is no present. That's one of those funny things. By the time we're aware of what the present is, it's already past.
Right. That could be maybe like a great new book. There is no present. And have a great argument behind that. That might be huge in philosophical circles.
That actually has been well written about in the Buddhist texts.
Oh, there
That
you
is
go.
not unique to me.
That'd be cool. I need to
Yeah,
look
it's
into
in
that.
tons of sutras and shit.
So you've had Preston Dennett on, which is a UFO researcher. I've had him on.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about disclosure?
Um,
And when is
you're
it
not
going to
gonna get,
happen?
you're not, my view on it is actually the same as Preston's. You're not going to get it from the government. Um, it does seem like the extraterrestrials themselves are kind of disclosing themselves piecemeal at a time. You know, I don't see any threat. I don't see any reptilians eating babies and controlling the world. I think this is all a peaceful, spiritual interaction that is still being tainted by human beings that believe in 3,000-year-old mythologies and corrupt systems of government.
What did you think about the ET that they showed in Mexico a few months back? Do you think it's real?
The mummy?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I I don't think that's real. No, no, because if it was real, you know, you'd be seeing like DNA tests of it being posted on the internet and real science being done on it. You know, that shit would be like in freaking Cornell University or someplace where it can really be studied.
Or maybe not be studied on purpose.
True. Yeah, I understand. Like you also worry about it getting out of the wrong hands, but I mean, come on, extraterrestrials, the cat's out of the bag on that. We know that we're not the only life in the universe.
Right.
Period.
Out of your 500 or so guests,
Mhm.
do you have a favorite? Or at least one that has really changed your paradigm?
The whole remote viewing thing definitely had an effect on me. So that one definitely did. I had a psychic, he's not always psychic, but a guy who works in mediumship. He basically goes around and tests mediums. And if their accuracy is like a certain thing, they put them on his list. And he does it because his son had passed away, and he went around to different mediums trying to, get in touch with his son. So I found that like very touching, and I do think like that is a good tool to help people with grief, you know. And so one of the important things I think that comes out of it is um I don't know, that there's just more. That there's more. We don't understand everything, and there's just more. And for me anyway, like there's just a belief that everything's okay. You know, one of the things I'm not sure you get them too, like some like doomsayer type of guests, and I try to stay away from that kind of stuff because I come on, I think as a race, as the human race in general, we're past that shit.
Yeah. Well, it all comes back to what you said earlier, and that is the universe itself is evolving.
Yeah.
And we just spoke, I just had a conversation with a guest the other day that we were kind of talking about what is God, and maybe God is everything evolving.
Oh, absolutely, that's what it is. I mean, that's certainly the most logical, I believe.
When we talk about reincarnation and why we come here, you see it in the comments quite often that people will say or write something like, well, why would anybody choose to come here and suffer?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the question I wrestle with every day I wake up.
And do you have an answer?
I absolutely do not. And I almost think like if anybody came around that said you did have the answer, I'm not going to believe them.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's something that we're really supposed to know.
Right. I've had a handful of guests that believe we're forced to reincarnate, so that's usually their answer is we're forced to come back here and suffer.
Yep, there's the forced one, there's the volunteer one, and then
Mhm.
there's sort of like the it just happens.
There are some guests that will say it's just boring on the other side, so even to come here and suffer would be exciting.
That was like if I were to look at my own life and pick one of those three, that's when I maybe that's why I signed up for this. Like some of that, like why would I do this to myself? Why would I want to live in this world of duality where everything is always conflicting against each other? Is always like there's always as much good as there is bad. That's just
Hmm.
how it is in this particular dimension.
Yeah.
Everything has this polar opposite. Why would I put myself through it? And the only thing I could think of, really, honestly, as cliche as it sounds, is I would have maybe come in here because I was bored and somebody showed me like the sex, drugs, and rock and roll that was happening in this dimension, and I fell for it.
Well, you were just there not too long ago. Could you see how being there for a long time could get boring?
I
I know,
can't answer that.
I know
Truthfully, I
you.
don't
I
know.
know you were
I have
angry when you got back, but if you had been there a few years, would you get tired of it?
there's really no time though.
Yeah.
And when you come back to that, back to there's no time and everything seems to be information and manifest once the consciousness focuses on something, it all sort of falls apart again for me, as far as like from a logical point of view. It's really difficult to really put it together in a big picture that makes sense.
You didn't say you didn't see any, but did you even sense any other beings there?
No, I was it.
Well, at least you had that experience that you could.
But like you said, like I've interviewed a lot of people, and a lot of the people that I've interviewed had interactions with angels, with deceased loved ones.
Mhm.
They've had the life review. They've had all sorts of different experiences that I didn't have. I'm like, nah, mine was just like blackness, peace.
The naysayers out there will just say that this is some kind of brain experience.
Yeah.
Would you say that's not true? You really were out of your body and in this place or in this realm?
I would say I was definitely my consciousness was out of my body. At least a certain percentage of it definitely was outside of my body and having some type of perceptual experience.
Mhm. Do you think that consciousness creates the body? Like the body is a manifestation of the consciousness?
Mm, so I believe that we're co-creators is the best theory that I can come up with. So somehow we're in cahoots with whatever is manifested in the universe, and somehow like I don't know, I don't know how it works. It's the whole idea that we exist is really strange, especially when you dig down into like physical matter and you find out that physical matter is empty too.
Hmm.
So it has to be like the logical thing is like, okay, then this must be information. We're just following a certain sets of rules,
Some of the guests will tap into some sort of universal field of knowledge and know
like the
everything,
Akashic records.
or just know everything in general. Did you experience that?
No, no, I definitely not.
At least
Wish I got into something where I knew everything.
the ones that do seems like they know they did, but they just can't remember everything. They can't bring it back with them.
Yeah, no, nothing like that. No, no. But what I do think is that we can have fun.
Mhm.
We can have fun experimenting with our consciousness. We can expand our thoughts. We can expand our view of the world. I do think that certain paradigms are dying out, and I think that those that's somebody like you yourself and is interested in this topic is a part of changing or and bringing about that new paradigm of thinking because we're so used to thinking in a way that's hierarchical kind of, top to bottom, bottom to top, and I think we're moving into one where it's more malleable and more interrelational,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
And even also you getting away of that linear thinking and time thinking.
Yes, yeah, the more time thinking. We can break away from that. And as people start to break away from that old way of thinking, I think that's going to change how we as a humanity will move on.
Mhm. After your NDE, have you taken life a lot less seriously or trying to have more fun here? You know what I mean?
No. It's
It's still the same.
no, it's still the same. Yeah.
Do you fear
Yeah.
death less?
Yes, I do fear death less. But I don't know if I ever really feared death to begin with. I mean, I don't want it to happen right now.
Right.
And but I don't know. I hope my death is like something dramatic and entertaining for people.
Wow.
No, I'm joking. You know what I mean.
Right.
It's just, again, because we don't actually exist in a weird way.
Do you think that we are all the same being? People talk about that. We're the same.
Okay, well, then you have to define the word being.
Right.
That's where the whole metaphysics gets really complicated. It's like a lot of people say yes, yes, yes to these certain words, but these words themselves are not actually themselves defined.
True.
So is a being that's an entity that's thinking like you and me, or are we talking about a being of some type of energy, source of energy that we're just not even close to being able to comprehend?
Why do we keep coming back over and over again?
Mhm.
What's the point of it?
Or why does it seem real if everything is just information? Why does it seem so real? Why are the emotions and the pain and the pleasures so intense?
Or if we know everything on the other side, then why are we coming here to learn?
That's a good question. That's one that I wrestle with too. Because people will say that, like we're coming here to learn, and then that would be like sort of my thought. Well, why? Well, I'm on the other side, and I already know all this stuff and have access to all the information in the universe. Why would I come here to have the direct experience to begin with?
Mhm. On the subject of UFOs, have you
Mhm.
seen one?
I only saw one once, and that was sort of doing like my own little C5 session by myself in the backyard. The
Mhm.
thing that Preston had told me to try, and I did see a light moving across the sky. At first, I thought it was an airplane, and then I don't know. I guess I started to think like, okay, it's moving really too fast to be an airplane. Maybe it's a satellite or something. But then it just stopped and just changed direction and disappeared.
Wow. Did you
So
meditate at the beginning of this?
yeah, yeah, it was like a typical C5, was CE5, like the queer type of technique.
Did you use like an app or a YouTube video to guide you through
No,
this meditation or?
no, no, it's just a little thing that Preston told me to do. I do think if you go out there and you just look at the sky, and you kind of just relax and ask the universe to show you something.
Mhm.
I don't know, something's out there listening and it shows itself.
One thing that I have noticed is that after having an NDE, a significant number of people start having UFO sightings or contact. And I feel like the
Mhm.
NDE changes a person in some aspect where either the UFOs can spot them on the ground or they have the ability to see them or
Mhm.
both.
One of the things that I found common with NDE experiencers, a lot of them afterwards have psychic abilities and
Mhm.
telepathic abilities.
Right. That's very common. Some kind of gift, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up with the gift of podcasting.
There you go. Hey, a gift of communicating.
Yeah.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you
Mhm.
up for that?
Of course I'm up for that.
What's the
Anybody
best
can ask me anything.
what's the best way to reach you?
Well, I am pretty much everywhere, but my email is everythingimaginable2020@gmail.com. If you Google my podcast, you'll find me on Facebook and a few other places as well.
And you have a website?
I do not have a website anymore.
Oh, all right. So it's best to either go to Facebook. I guess it is Facebook is probably the best way then to reach you personally.
I'll say email.
Email?
Yep.
Okay.
Everythingimaginable2020@gmail.com.
Cool.
Or you can put comments in the notes of this video and I will read them and respond.
That's great. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
Absolutely. I think the world is in a transitionary phase, and it's definitely changing for the better. And there's really nothing for people to be afraid of.
That's a great message. Gary, it was a pleasure hanging out with you and meeting a fellow podcaster.
All right. It's nice being here. I had fun.
Yeah, thank you for joining me, and I wish you the best.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.